Hello and welcome to Gettable, AFL.com.au's trade and draft show. I'm Riley Beveridge. I'm joined by Cal Toomey. Cal, we've got a massive episode.
Hang on, that was weird. What are you doing? That sounded like a very pronounced
we had some feedback that we'd started saying Gettable, and it was with two D's, not two T's. So the show is Gettable. So
it is.
From now on, I'll make a very pronounced effort to say Gettable.
Okay, good work.
So welcome to Gettable. Cal, we've got a massive show. Adelaide recruiting manager Hamish Ogilvie is going to be joining us. There's plenty to get through there. The Crows are in a really interesting spot with their list. They've built a really good list that's got them to a good position this year, but we want to find out what's next for him in the Crows. We'll be looking at what Andrew Dillon, what's on his agenda now that he's the incoming AFL CEO, and from a list and trade and draft perspective, what he needs to get through. And then also some listener questions. A new segment, Askable. We put the feelers out last night on our Instagram at Gettable with two T's, which you can find it. And we got some rippers back.
We did. We're looking forward to a big show. Also going to talk about some players who are going under the draft radar very shortly. But I'll tell you what's not going under the draft radar.
What?
The Gettable Gospel. Hit them with a little Gettable Gospel. Another 2 entries for the weekend. We appreciate all our watchers setting these ones through. Brian Taylor, another one to add to the crew. An interesting time to be watching a trade and draft show midway through the Carlton and Brisbane game, but he found a way.
Gettable.
And we've hit the tall forward mafia.
Have we?
Yep.
The tall forward mafia.
Jonathan Brown, Sunday, during the halftime break, managed to let everyone in on what was catching his eye ahead of the week.
Gettable.
We're going to put together a supercut of the Gettable mentions soon. So if you keep seeing them, keep sending them through.
But Cal, the AFL has a new CEO coming in at the end of the season. Announced last week that Andrew Dillon would be succeeding Gillan McLachlan in the post as the AFL's chief executive. We want to go through the Dillon's dozen, don't we, Cal?
Yeah, the Dillon dozen. These are the dozen questions that he has to answer at some point. Maybe he can come on the show and answer. I'd love him to. I think we'll be able to get him at some point to answer these ones. But these are the trade, draft, free agency questions that I think are left open now as to where it looks and where this space moves to.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big ones is when can we expect trading multiple years in advance? Now, clubs were actually briefed on Tuesday at a football bosses meeting, and a lot of these topics were raised, this including in those, future drafting more than a year in advance into the future. I think in the past the AFL has been reluctant for clubs clearly to sell their future off, but and do it 2 years in advance. I think there's probably an openness now from a lot to do that, but some are still a little bit reluctant. So I'm interested to see where that one fits.
I think you should be able to do it with protections, similar to the NBA. So you can say, we can trade you our 2027 first round pick, but it's got a top 10 protection. So if it's in the top 10, it doesn't count and it shifts over to the next year. That avoids a club who's really struggling unexpectedly from trading away their future.
Yep. That's one. So I think the other question in the future trading element would be, should clubs be able to trade multiple picks in future years as a stopgap? We had Chris Davies, the Port Adelaide football boss, on Gettable a few weeks ago, and he said that he was keen to do that. Obviously, Port Adelaide last year put in a proposal to be able to trade their future first and second picks. At the moment, if you trade your future first pick, you're not able to trade any others. So that could be a mechanism that could at least have a provision to allow the AFL to tick off some circumstances where that's available. Another one on the Dillon dozen. Will clubs ever to be able to trade players without their consent? Now, the AFL's put this to the AFLPA as part of the CBA negotiations. I think it's probably more unlikely than likely from an AFLPA point of view, but it's definitely a question that has to be asked.
It happens in the NBA. And I know they get paid more, but also you can build in no trade clauses into contracts in the NBA. So I think that's potentially a get around to that. So you can, if you were a star player who doesn't want to be able to be traded against your will, build in a no trade clause into that contract.
Nice, I like it. Will player salaries ever be public? I think it's unlikely.
Yep.
I think given the media interest in the game, I think more often than not the player's salary would be worked against their player rather than for the player.
Yep.
I think we'd hear a lot more about how a player's been costing a side $233,000 a kick rather than the player who's actually costing them $10,000 a kick. So I don't think that there's going to be too much on that front.
No. What do we settle on in terms of list sizes post-Tasmania expansion? So you wrote about this in Inside Trading last week, Cal, and whether or not they're reduced going forward given there is an additional club coming into the system?
Yeah, I think there will be a list trimming across the competition before that 2027 start. How do they find the extra 30 players without it? I don't think you're going to be able to make them competitive from the opening without list sizes coming back. So I think there's going to be around the same amount of jobs for players, but it might just be spread out amongst a 19th team.
And what's the dollar price of a draft pick? This is another one that you've been big on for quite some time now.
Yeah, I think buying picks is coming. I think buying picks is outright as a manoeuvre is coming. I wrote 2 years ago, the next evolution of the trade period is the trading of money and salary cap space, and it's heading towards that like a freight train. So I think salary cap space is the biggest weapon now for clubs to have in their armour. How much do you use it? Do you use it to keep your own players? Do you use it to trade and pick up picks? That's where Hawthorn has an advantage this year, and Essendon has an advantage this year, and North Melbourne has an advantage this year because they're salary cap loaded, so they can go and buy some picks and do it that way. But I think that clubs should be able to buy picks outright for salary cap space.
So that's our half a dozen trade and fantasy questions, our half a dozen draft questions. What changes will be made to the NGA system?
Yeah, I think it gets lowered to a top 20 restricted zone probably for next year, but a rezoning has to happen now because Tasmania's got North Melbourne's zone, so that is a big question.
How do we lower the draft age, and do we lower the draft age? You wrote about this on afl.com.au this morning, that a handful of 17-year-olds should be able to enter the mix as AFL draftees.
Yeah, I think this is a legitimate idea that should be put forward to clubs and for the AFL to consider. It's only under a number of caveats, so they have to have finished school, or Year 12 education, or be studying at tertiary level to be eligible. So in the same example, Harley Reid wouldn't be in this example because he's still at school this year. So you can't just drop out of school and chase the footy dream. This is where education does come first. But if you are finished school, like Jagger Smith will finish this year at Scotch College, he should be able to spend next year at an AFL club and in an AFL program, not be able to play at AFL level, though, until the following year when the rest of his draft class is.
Just quickly, does he get drafted to a club, or does he get bought, like in the mini draft when the Giants came in?
He gets drafted.
Like it.
He's in the mix with any other 18-year-old. So it's up to the clubs then to take the risk. A year out, are we seeing enough, and have we seen enough to rank them against top age players?
Makes it an interesting one.
How do we make the draft a showcase event like the NFL?
It was in Kansas City this year.
I've got an idea. Get us involved.
Love it.
That'd take this draft to the next level. And I'm serious.
How do we bolster the pathway system?
Just on the draft as an event, I think the one thing that I like about, there's a few things I like about the NFL, but there's 300,000 people in Kansas City.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure we're hitting that mark, but I think we will see the AFL push ahead with some plans to try and bring open the draft situation. I think that's been in the works for a couple of years. The biggest roar of the draft came via social media last year when George Wardlaw got drafted and his mates celebrated.
Yeah, bring his mates along.
His mates have got to be at the event, so then they can outroar each other. You get 25 tickets. Bring your rowdiest and loudest crew so that they can come and say yes and make it a real atmosphere within the room.
Okay. Well, you said, how do they bolster the pathway system? If they televise under-18s games, it might help bring 300,000 through the doors one day.
One day. I'm not sure we're ever hitting that mark, but I think... Look, you can watch a lot of it on AFL.com.au and the Coach Talent League app now and through different means. But there's no doubt that I think it has grown a lot over the last 10 years. And we've gone from previously having a knowledge of probably 8 to 10 names, where by the end of the season, there's probably 30.
Is he comfortable with the current FatherSon Academy bidding system? I've got a thought on this. I'm strong on this, that I think you should have to have one to get one. So I think if you have a FatherSon or Academy player bidded on in the first round, you should have to have a first-round pick to match that bid. Now, you could have already used it, but at least you've got one there. If they're bid in the second round, you have to have a second-round pick. I think what that does is it means that clubs will then have to negotiate. If a player's borderline top 20 and he ends up going to 15 and they take the risk and don't have a first-round pick, they should then have to buy one in on the night, or they risk losing the player.
I like that. And the last question off the Dylan Dozen. I hope we can't get him on.
Yes.
Bang, bang, bang. We've probably gone a little bit too hard here. It was too many questions. Just bang at him. Should first-year draft contracts be increased? Now, this has been raised for first-round players as part of the CBA negotiations as well, to stretch it from 2 to 3 years for those premium players. I think the AFLPA will be against that, given there's the Sam Walsh, Nick Dacos types, but there's going to be means to be able to reward those guys under those rules.
I love the Dylan Dozen.
Can we bring back like a Andrew's Answers?
Yes.
It becomes by Andrew's Answers.
I like it, Cal. Maybe that's our pitch to get him on. we've all heard about the Harley Reids, the Nick Watsons, the Zane Dersmers. They've been dominating the draft discussion. I want you to give us the draftees we're not talking about.
Okay, I've got 7 for you here. Let's whip through them because there's a few guys and other names that I want to put on the radar. Jordan Croft is one of those. Kicked 4 goals on the weekend. He was a standout for Vic Metro in the clash with the Young Guns. 200 centimetres, athletic, has pace. He's rising up draft boards. Of course, he's the father-son for the Western Bulldogs, the son of Matthew Croft at the Bulldogs, who was a defender there.
Yep.
But yeah, there's lots to like him, and it was a standout on the weekend. He's someone to keep an eye on over the next little bit for Vic Metro. Ollie Murphy, another tall prospect. These are where the tall, I always say, Riley, the tall shorten as the draft gets closer. They come in because people want to grab the players. 199 centimetres. I watched him play school footy in the ruck over the weekend for Caulfield Grammar. The Wizard kicked 4 in the first quarter, by the way, and took a massive hangover. It was just like everyone's there.
What do you end up with?
7'5".
Love that.
But Ollie Murphy's taking shape as an athletic defender. That's what he'll be picked as. Mm-hmm. He had a standout game for Vic Metro a couple of weeks ago in a trial. Settled in defence for the Sandringham Dragons. He's a real riser. I think he could be in that top 20 conversation going forward. Mitch Edwards. He's a player we haven't spoken too much about on this show. The standout ruckman of the draft, 207 centimetres. So he's a big, big boy. Dominant in the Colts footy in Western Australia for Peel Thunder, averaging 35 hitouts a game. He's tied to Fremantle as a Next Generation Academy player, but there's little to no chance he gets through to the pick 40 where he'd be eligible. So he's going to be the Cam McKenzie or Mac Andrew of this year, most likely. He's the standout ruckman off the group. And there's a guy from the Greater Western Victoria Rebels in Joel Fraser, who's a really exciting talent to keep an eye on. His best game came a couple of weeks ago for the Rebels, where he collected 26 disposals, 6 clearances and 6 goals, all from a wing. Has a bit of Hugh McCluggage in the smooth moving through the traffic. 191 centimetres, so a little bit bigger than Hugh, but could jump up for the draft and for clubs keeping an eye on him with a good championships for Vic Country.
You got any brothers of current players for us?
Oh, I do.
Wow!
You'd never believe it. Sam Van Rooyen has kicked 11 goals in his first 4 games for Claremont in the Colts competition. They're a bit different to his older brother Jacob, who's obviously a bull at a gate and in the news at the moment, but Van Rooyen may be a little bit more finesse to his style. 193 centimetres, kicks the ball really well. Had a 5-goal, 5-game against Subiaco a couple of weeks ago. So a key forward who is improving. Logan Evans debuted for Norwood at senior level this year. Played some games there. 188 centimetres, medium defender. Tests well for agility. With his size, he could be that third tall backman if he can hold down some different types of forwards. And Harry Dimatea, that's how you pronounce it, Dimatea, the cricketer who ran drinks for the Australian Test side on Boxing Day last year. He's in that top 30 mix as well. Trained at Melbourne recently as part of his program. Has pace, runs the 20 metre in 2.92 seconds and can play across the ground, usually as a midfielder. So there are 7 names added to the list at the top of the group, and we're expanding this draft pool that we're talking about. So I just wanted people to keep an eye on these ones as well, because it can't all be about those top 3 or 4. There are 18 picks in the first round. Some of these might feature.
They might. One man who will know all about these players and plenty more is one of the best in the business when it comes to the recruiting space. It is Adelaide's recruiting manager, Hamish Ogilvie. Let's bring him in. Well, Cal, as you mentioned off the top of the show, we've got a very special guest joining us on Gettable this week, and it is Adelaide's recruiting manager, Hamish Ogilvie. Hamish, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, boys. Always a pleasure.
Great
it is always a pleasure.
Lots to talk to you about. Let's start with this year's draft. What are you seeing off the 2023 crop?
I think it's a strong draft. Yeah, I think particularly in some positions. Running half back, there seems to be a lot, maybe 10, 15. Haven't really seen depth like that in one position in a draft, but the top end looks good. I think we're ready for the Nationals now. I think the boys have played enough, so we just need a bit of good weather.
Crows supporters should tune in over the next 15 or so minutes, because we're going to get through a lot around how this list has been built, what we've seen this year and what's next as well. But while we're on this year's top class, a lot of attention clearly on Harley Reid. How does he figure compared to the other number ones in the previous couple of seasons, and your view on the top 6 to 7 as well?
Well, when you think about number ones over history, they're all number one for a reason, deservedly so. Nick and Zane might have something to say about who's number one. He's not number one yet because it's not the end of the year yet. So, but he's a fantastic player and he's done really well, and his VFL form's been good. And yeah, look, he's an outstanding talent. But Nick's been fantastic as well. You can't really fault what he's done. I saw him at Geelong Grammar a couple of weeks ago. What he had to put up with the Geelong kids behind the goals, yelling and screaming at him for 4 quarters, and the discipline that he showed was fantastic. So credit to him, and he's in great form.
How, just on Harley in particular, how do you rate him compared to the previous number ones, the guys like Sam Walsh, Matt Rowell, Will Ashcroft coming through the system?
I don't want to give you a boring answer, but you do it in isolation on that year and the pool in that year. So, look, he stacks up fine with all those guys, and they're all, as I said, they're all number one for a reason because they're great talents, great kids. But I enjoy Harley's company. He's a really good country lad, down to earth. But the other boys are going to push him as well.
How do you view the South Australian talent in this year's draft pool? I mean, you haven't necessarily been a club that's picked strictly from South Australia in the past, but how do you view the talent pool coming through there?
I think we'll learn a lot more this week against New South Wales. This corresponding game last year was a really good game, and New South Wales did a really good job against South Australia. So because some of the boys are up in reserves and league, and some are, the under-18 comp in South Australia was good early when they were all playing. They've gone to school footy now. So I think we just need to see a little bit more there. I think it's a normal group in South Australia and Western Australia. Probably, as it usually is, 60% is going to come from Victoria. The Tassie boys are going well. Jez has got them playing really well, so that they're going to have some talent as well. I think it's normal. You're probably going to see 10 or so from the WA, South Australia, and the majority from Victoria.
You mentioned at the top we're waiting for the championships. Do you think that does move the needle a lot this year? Is there still a lot to play out?
Yeah, I think it helps you sort it out.
Yeah.
I mean, performance against the best against the best, that's what you really want to see. You'd love to see those games every week. It's not possible. But I think it's going to sort it out, and it's going to certainly help us do our job a lot more clearly.
What about Saturday? Because the AFL Academy is playing against Carlton's VFL side, so that'll be streamed on afl.com.au as well for everyone keen to have a look at that, a curtain raiser between those two teams. Keep an eye out as well for our behind-the-scenes documentary from the Academy's trip in Adelaide and Gatherend. Hamish, you had the Academy at the club?
Yeah, it was great. Like? It was great for us. It was a great opportunity for us to have the boys at the club for a whole day. So they trained, they did recovery, we had lunch together with the other clubs there as well. Just a fantastic opportunity for our club, and the guys at the club did a great job. It's for us as an interstate club outside of Melbourne to have those boys come to Adelaide, touch it, feel it, see it, go, yeah, this is a good place. I'd be happy to come here, which we don't often get that chance to sell or have them in the four walls. So they had the full run of the club for the day. So it was a great opportunity. We're really grateful for the boys to be there.
We actually sat at the same lunch table that day.
We did.
Chicken and avocado sandwiches with Zane Durzer and Ashton Moyer.
Good conversation.
Jack Deline as well.
They were good, the boys.
They were big sayings as well. The rise of Adelaide this year, I mean, you're 4-4, but your form's probably been better than that to a certain extent. I mean, was this the jump that you expected to occur this season?
I did, because I'm always super on the positive side. But it's been building, and it's been a clear plan. There's no doubt about it. It's not by accident. We planned it out, but the coaches have done a fantastic job. The players have bought in. Yeah, we're still probably 3-4 youngest team every week, and they're really competitive. And we've been in every game, so that's been great. Nixie's done a fantastic job. He did the hard yards when he had to play the young boys early, and we played them, and now they're coming through together. But it's never linear. There'll be ups and downs. You two think about when you played your first 50 games.
Oh, man, it was a struggle. But my next 50 was fantastic.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not always going to be a Nick Dacos where you just come in and everything's perfect, a Gavin Brown where you're in and you never get dropped. It's very rare, that linear progression. So there'll be some ups and downs, and we're seeing a bit of that. But, we're much more competitive. We're in games every week. We're challenging the best, and that was what we wanted to do coming into the season.
I think this show is actually like Nick Dacos and Josh Rochelle, actually just 5 on debut and just bang.
This is not always smooth.
I want to ask you about the 2021 crop in particular with Josh Rochelle, as Cal was mentioned, at pick 6, and then Jake Saligo later. They're having such a big impact in the first years of their careers. I mean, how have you seen the difference they've been able to make to the side?
What I love is they are so tight. There's such a tight group. Those boys come through together, and they're best mates, and add Luke Nankervis to that, and Zach Taylor, who's unfortunately injured at the moment. They're a really tight group, and you want to bring clusters through together. 4 from a draft, 3 from a draft, 5 from a draft, and it's not always easy. But they've had some impact, but it won't always be smooth. There'll be ups and downs. I listen to Brad Johnson talk about sometimes getting dropped or going back to the sample, which is a good comp at the moment, and our sample team's doing really well. So it's providing a really good platform for the boys to come in, and when they come in, they're ready. So it won't always be perfect and easy.
They were draftees, Josh particularly early, Jordan Butts and Nick Murray as rookies. Does that shape how you guys view the key defensive position as well, and how early you grab these type of positions?
Well, we've been lucky or hard work and great work by the team to get some of those, like a Kyle Hardigan from Werribee through. It's possible to get the defenders that way.
Jake Kelly.
You have a Daniel Talia who's a top 10 pick and plays his whole career there. There's those stories as well. But those two boys, we knew they had great work ethic, and they've done a great job.
Did you ever lose any faith? Is the wrong word, but it's taken some time for Darcy Fogarty to click into the player that we've seen over the last 2 years.
Not really, because when you think about tools across the competition and tools over history. And I joke with you guys about the 50 games you never played, but
how many did you play?
It takes. I think about my first 50 at Montmorency. I had no idea, but it takes some time, and we know the tours take a little bit of time. So no, we never lost faith, and Das has worked really hard, and it's not perfect. There's ups and downs with all of them. So the King boys have had injuries, and they're star top 10 talent. So everyone's different. The game doesn't know what pick you are.
You've made a couple of key list additions as well over the last couple of years, and Jordan Dawson, one of them in particular. I mean, could you have foreseen that he'd be captain of the football club and one of the best midfielders in the competition sort of 18 months after he arrived?
Well, the credit really goes to Reedy and the coaches on that one, because and the guys doing the pro scouting, because they watched him and forecast that. We knew he was a very good player at Sydney, but that's credit to Jordan, what he's done. I mean, his leadership's developing really, really well. So you'd love to add one of those every year, but it's not always possible.
Gave up pick 5 last year for Izak Rankine, amongst a suite of other picks back and forth. What's he brought? On-field, off-field, prevalence in the forward line, but also just his attitude off the field, because he's a spark everywhere he is.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and he's fitted in seamlessly. The boys love him. Obviously, it helps when you know the town and you know the people, and he'd been at the club before and trained with us, so that all helped with the speed we knew we needed to add. So he's added that. Credit to him, he's worked really hard. We knew he was a really good runner. People underestimate how good a runner he is. Like his GPS is through the roof. He's up and back. So he's done the work. Pre-season he had the shoulder up, but he's done a power of work. So credit to Izak.
You've gone to the draft for a number of years now. Where do you see the next evolution of the list? How do you attack the next couple of years? Do you see the focus start to shift towards more established, experienced players? Or?
Well, we've been a draft and develop team more through this. Sloaney hates the word rebuild. I can't think of a better word. So,
build.
Sorry, Sloaney.
Just build.
But we have to do a bit of that. We're not going to get 5 players from other clubs to come to Adelaide in 1 year. So we've had to do it that way. Clearly, Izak and Jordan were targets that we were specific on need. South Australians back home. So we'll continue to look at that. It won't always be possible, but we've clearly said we're ready for that. That's the next stage of the build.
Some money in the cap, I reckon.
But we might, this is a good draft. So maybe this is a draft to go with 3 or 4 picks, and we don't trade or bring a free agent in.
Well, that's where it's good to have a free agent.
We're open at both.
What about your own free agent in Tom Duday? Off contract this year, hasn't made a call yet, hasn't really got into that decision-making process yet. Where does it sit with Tom?
Oh, there's been good dialogue, and the dialogue's open and continuing. Tommy's really invested. I saw him a couple of weeks ago, had a chat with him. He's really happy, so that's progressing pretty well. So I'll leave that one to Reedy and Tommy when he's ready.
Where is Reedy? Is he coming in to answer that question? Maybe later in the show. I want to ask you a couple of broader ones, Hamish, because it's an interesting time for your space, because there's a new team coming in 5 years, but the work will start on that pretty soon. From a club perspective, knowing that Tasmania is coming through, how much do you prepare, or how much can you prepare, or look at the list concessions that are going to inevitably be given, and they're going to be broad and strong, to make your own planning sort of ready for that?
Well, firstly, as a club, we were really supportive of Tassie coming in, so we're rapt that they're in, and well done to them, but now they're the opposition. And I work for the Adelaide Footy Club, and Tasmania are in the comp, and they're going to be the opposition. So clearly you have to plan for it, but it's hard to answer the question at the moment because we don't know exactly what the rules are going to be, what they're going to get, what they're not going to get. So, but you factor it in. I mean, Chase Jones is out of contract now. Reedy's working with his manager, and they're having some good discussions. So Who knows, those boys might want to stay at their clubs forever and not go back. I don't know, but that's up to the Tassie people. They've got a lot of hard work to do now.
This show's called Gettable. Are you Gettable, Hamish? You've got Tasmania coursing through your veins. You've spent a lot of time down there.
I work for the Adelaide Crows, Cal. Are you Gettable if the Herald Sun come? Fox Footy. Riley, the Diamond Valley News. They might come calling.
Valley News.
That's out his way.
I'm an Eltham boy. We love that.
Mid-season draft's coming up. You don't have a pick at the moment.
No, and I hope we don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best course of action.
Yeah.
That would mean that you're fit and healthy. How do you think the competition has worked its way through the mid-season draft, finding the best ones, knowing that it came in 2019, 2020, and 20 didn't happen, and then it's been the last couple of years?
We've done a fair bit of work on it, and the data guys have done some really great work. I hope we don't have a pick. Zach Taylor's injured at the moment. I'd love Zach to be able to get back in time for the Sanford finals if we make it. So I think that'd be important. Hopefully that can happen. We'll wait on medical advice as to how long before he can get back and whether we can do that. So at this stage, we don't have a pick. When you think about it, some of the work we did, really pleased with Paddy Parnell. Paddy's the 19-year-old of the mid-season draftees that's played the most games. So,
right.
And he's right on the edge of selection now for us, given he's back from his concussion. He's in really good form. His last 2 weeks have been great. But the John Noble, Sam Durham, Jai Newcomb, who else have we got? Marlon Pickett, Gardner at the Bulldogs. They've been the most successful ones. So they're more the mature ages.
Yeah.
So not as many of the 19-year-olds. And sadly, Jai Cully got injured and he looked like he was tracking really well. And it was a great pick by West Coast. But the John Noble pick's a brilliant pick by Collingwood. I mean, we knew him really well. We've known him since he was a baby, basically. And great pick. So they seem to be the ones that have been the most successful. But there's not heaps.
Yeah. Just going back to Tassie for a second. I know I was joking about you spending time there, but you have. How much an impact do you feel like on that community is it going to be? Have you got that sense already?
I feel wrapped for my friends down there. That they're going to have their team and the kids, and it's going to. And you see how well the basketball's done. A funny story. Brett Gapin, who was captain of the Devils when I was there, he got an email from the Wall Street Journal.
Now, as you do.
Brett's worked for us at different stages through the years. He's well known in Tasmania. He's a board member at Clarence now. He thought it was a joke. He thought we'd set him up. Here's this letter from the Wall Street Journal wanting to know about the Devil as a logo, as a brand, and whether Warner Brothers would let it go. So he thinks it's a setup. So he checks with the journalist from the Wall Street Journal, and it's actually real. So they did an interview with him and a story about the brand and the Devils and what it was like to be captain of the Devils. So he sent back a picture with his daughter with the old Tassie Devils jumper on, which was a fantastic jumper. I'd love him to use that jumper. But
so it's getting in the Wall Street Journal.
It'll be in the Wall Street Journal in the next week or so. So they're on the world map.
Absolutely.
Cal wrote a story this morning on afl.com.au about wanting to see 17-year-olds.
Did he write it or his ghostwriter?
I wrote it.
What would your thoughts on that be? A handful of 17-year-olds being eligible to be drafted to clubs in the future?
It sort of worked in the past. I think we're going to learn a lot of lessons from Gold Coast and GWS's entry. You think back to that sort of Brad Crouch mini draft, Jager O'Meara. That worked pretty well. So.
It's a similar type of
model.
That
would make sense if there's something like that. But again, we haven't seen all the concessions and the rules, so I don't want to make too much comment until I see it all and we can work through it.
Just agree with me. That's okay.
Well done. Well written.
Yeah, no worries. Last one. We've been asking all of our guests on their favourites. So if it's their favourite trade, their favourite draft pick, their favourite moment, who's your favourite draft pick? Because I know you made plenty. Understand that, and this might not be the player who's played the most games, but to you, the one that either you searched for or found.
Probably the answer that most people. I love the Ricky Henderson pick because that was just a smoky out of the bush, and I sat at Trentham watching kick 7.5 one day. That gave us a fair bit of satisfaction. But to draft a friend so the Ian Callanan pick's my favourite pick.
Yeah,
and we should have done it way earlier. The game should have done it way earlier because he was that good. Who knows how good he could have been if he got drafted as an 18, 19-year-old. That's my favourite pick because we got to draft a friend. And the only problem with that is now I feel so old because someone's going to draft his son. Imagine if you drafted the father and the son. I'm not sure that's happened too many
that would
times
have to be
before.
A first.
And Jack's going really well, and he's a great kid, Jack. So I hope he ends up on the list somewhere.
How is he going? He kicked a bag of 7 a couple of weeks ago.
NT is struggling a little bit at the moment without all their players back who are playing in South Australia and Western Australia. Some have come back and played. So he got really hot early. He kicked 3 in 6 minutes, and you thought I could see Jack thinking I'm going to kick 15 today. And it dried up for a little while, and then he finished with 7. So no, he's going really well. He'll play against Carlton on Saturday, and we look forward to watching him.
We've got a gift for you. All of our guests get gifts.
I've been looking forward to this.
There you go. This is your
double XL or just an XL?
Just an XL for you.
Okay.
Hold it up for the camera here. There you go.
I love that.
That suits you now. I want to see you at Marvel Stadium on Saturday in that shirt.
I'm not sure we'll be able to do that, but thanks very much for the shirt. And I'll pass on. Riley is gettable for the Diamond Valley News if you're looking for him.
You've landed a few punches today. It's been good. Yeah. We'll get you back on later in the year when we can really narrow in on who you're going to take.
We love that.
Hopefully we have a pick.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We thank Hamish for his time this week on Gettable. I thought it was a bit stiff with the Diamond Valley News.
I
was angling for a gig at the Wall Street Journal after a story.
New York Times.
Yeah, exactly. Could have been anywhere. Cal, we've had a couple of really good segments recently.
Have we?
None better than the pitch last week.
I'm glad you thought so.
Went really well. We put the question out to our Instagram followers as well around who won the pitch.
Yeah.
So where Tom DeConing.
So I wanted to keep track of this. So I've been searching around all morning in the office. You've seen me.
Yeah, I have.
Trying to find a whiteboard, and I found one. It's
small.
It's small.
No. Cal.
Can we use this one?
No.
Okay.
I've literally found one next to your desk after you searched all morning for that. This one was literally on Cal's desk as you're searching around the office.
1 second. So we need a scoreboard for the pitch. We're going to keep this throughout the year.
So it was 65-35 percentage-wise in favour of Cal, which I thought was unjust.
You're not happy with that?
I thought it was unjust.
So I win?
I thought my sauce article was good. There we go. 1 to Cal.
There we are. Hopefully that's still white.
We all...
Hey, everyone got a little bit worried there.
Well, I did. I was worried for our new studio here. But we also put the question out to our Instagram followers this week for our next segment, which is Askable. Yep. Love it. All right, so this is where we asked all of our listeners at Gettable on Instagram any trade draft fantasy questions. We got some good ones. I want to throw them at you here, Cal.
Let's rip through them.
Let's start with Jason Good, who starts with a good question. Should the Dons go hard at Ben Mackay? Our size down back gets shown up by big forwards.
They need to work out what's happening with their own free agents before they chase another one.
Okay, like that. Matt Roach, with no first-round pick at the moment, do you see Richmond getting creative to get players or a pick back?
I think they go at the free agency market. We've mentioned Harry Himmelberg a few weeks ago. Revealed there that they had some interest in him. I think the free agency route is where they probably start.
Like it. Planet John, how likely is Devon Robertson to get back to WA and what would he be worth?
Visiting Planet John? I think he's likely to be on the move. I don't know if it's necessarily as WA. I think there'll be Victorian interest in him. There was last year.
Okay. You demand. Do the Swans need another inside bull and who should they target? He's thrown out 3 names, Matt Crouch, Nat Fyfe and Luke Dunstan.
They're different players. I don't think they necessarily go and target one of those guys.
Okay.
No.
Do you think they target one in general?
They're looking for tools.
Okay. It's interesting. Yep. Lockie McLean, if the draft was tomorrow, what would the number 1 pick be worth?
3.5 firsts.
And a half?
3.5 firsts.
Okay.
Yeah. You can work that out. It's 3 firsts and you make up the difference and get something in there. So I think it's more than 3 first rounders.
And of course...
And you have to have a pick inside the first 5. I think you're going to have to retain a pick inside the first 5 if you're going to move from pick 1.
And of course, as we spoke about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, there is a club in a prime position to do that.
Yeah, Melbourne has a lot of picks. North Melbourne also has, at the moment, its first round pick, Port Adelaide's first round pick, and a future first round pick. I reckon if they don't end up with pick 1, that they'd have a look at it as well.
Ben Mansell, do you think Harry Himmelberg is gettable for Collingwood?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to ask the question. Yep.
Seamus, do the Blues need more speed in the midfield and can they afford it even if they do? I think they need more speed in the midfield. I think they need more runners through the midfield as well. They get shown up by teams who beat them on ball. It's whether or not how they get one. They've drafted really well in that space over the last couple of years, but it'll be interesting to see how they think about getting someone who's more established. Tim Ryan, Parrish and Hobbs both out of contract. Do the Bombers still need both given they've also got Elijah Sardis coming through? Don't look at me like that. I didn't ask the question. Don't shoot the messenger.
Did anyone watch the first quarter on the weekend? Come on, man. Goosey, who makes the decisions on who to trade for and draft for clubs? How much influence does a coach have? I think the coach does have a fair bit of influence in what it looks like, but in the end it comes down to the list and recruiting team.
They have to get brought in late, don't they?
Yeah.
James asks, would you say BZT is gettable and should Adelaide and Port be after him?
Well, hasn't started talks and is in career best form. Really good season so far for the Bombers. Look, Adelaide's, I think, pretty sure in its key position stocks. Port Adelaide has been looking around for one. So you'd have to say that they'd look at him, but I think there would be a number of clubs looking at him. I think the Bombers will want to keep him as well.
Frank McCardle, where can we get those T-shirts?
No, Francis. We're working on the T-shirts.
We are.
We're working on the T-shirts.
And lastly, Craig Allen. I like this one. I may be a little bit delusional, but how about Ben Simmons in 2027 for Tasmania's marquee import? The Suns had Carmichael Hunt and the Giants had Israel Folau. I think it was Ben's dream to play for Essendon. Wasn't back in the day. So I don't mind it, though. I mind a bit of height down there in the forward line. I would be kicking to Ben Simmons, wouldn't you?
You would. I don't know if he'd be kicking to you.
It's been a great episode. We thank Hamish for coming on board. We thank you, Cal, for your time over the last little bit. And we thank you for listening. Don't forget afl.com.au and AFL Live app for inside trading tomorrow morning. All of the latest trade, draft and free agency news. That's every Thursday morning on afl.com.au. And we'll see you next week for Gettable.